Welcome to the Grow Fast podcast, where we talk with leading sales, marketing, and personal growth experts about how companies can accelerate sales, optimize marketing, and grow their businesses fast. Let's go.
Hey, Bart, how are you?
Hey, what's going on?
A lot, actually. I am on the road and I'm in a hotel, and I thought I had a private meeting room booked for this podcast, but I'm in the business center. So we may get people doing stuff behind me here. We may have to edit out. Who knows? But I'm looking forward to talking to you. Where are you at?
No problem. I'm in Clearwater. So I'm at the office in Clearwater. Just got back in town. So
nice. Looks like you got are those palm trees outside your window out there? Some kind of.
Those are some pine trees. We got plenty of palm trees too. We're in Florida.
Nice. Well, I'm in Seattle, and for about 9 months out of the year, I envy everybody in Florida. So,
I'm sure.
Hey, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because, you've done a lot of work on the marketing side, but you also have, a lot of work on the sales side. You built a company called the Progressive Dental Marketing. And I want to talk to you about what you've done there and how you've helped dentists and dental practices kind of market their businesses. But you also have the Closing Institute, which focuses more on sales training, which is kind of unique because, traditionally getting sales and marketing fully aligned has always been a challenge. And so you've are kind of doing both. I'm looking forward to that conversation. Also want to take lessons learned from the dental industry and see how we can apply them across other industries. Before we do that, maybe take a step back and you can talk a little bit about how, you became the founder of Progressive Dental Marketing. What prompted you to do that, and what are some of the, key lessons learned?
Well, long story in terms of creating the company. But long story short, company was basically created from me just trying to help doctors make money and close bigger cases. First thing I saw was a lot of the doctors were just really focused on how many new patients they needed every month. And it was like, hey, we need 50 new patients, or hey, I'm going to bring on an associate. Now we need 80 new patients. And I was always kind of wondered, like, why are they so worried about why does it matter how many patients they get? Right.
Were they attaching any kind of like lifetime value to a patient?
Yeah, but it's so different. Depends on the condition of the patient. Do you want patients that need a lot of work, or like what type of patient are we looking for here? If we want to do $2 million, I'd rather have a $2 million production practice seeing 20 patients a month than a $20 million production practice seeing 80 new patients a month. But there was no plan. There was no design there to be efficient, which put all of the practices in this position of being extremely reactive, meaning you don't know what type of patients are going to come in. So they all go through the exam process. They open their mouth, they look in, they do all the diagnostics, and then they figure out what needs to be done. But they have to be kind of ready for anything. And when you really look at these practices numbers, you see that every quarter that they spend doing dentistry, the quarters either make or break the quarter based on the big cases. Really? And they kind of come in waves sometimes, but the problem is for most doctors, there's no consistency to it. So they don't know when those big cases are going to show up or how often, which means it makes it very difficult to grow your practice and actually in a predictable manner and be able to forecast. So the first thing that I really did to help them was just create a strategy. Okay, let's walk through how we want to grow the practice. What's the most efficient way to grow the practice? And for the doctors, there's only 24 hours in a day. They can only spend so much time doing dentistry. So what type of dentistry can you do that brings in the maximum amount of production, right, with the time that you have? And once we started to get away from volume, right, like, hey, I need 50 or 80 new patients, then we started targeting patients with specific conditions that were going to lead to much larger cases. And that simplified the advertising, right? Because if you don't have that, if you don't have any specificity with the advertising, then you have to go general. That means you got to hit everybody with what kind of message? Some general type of message that may appeal to a lot of different people with a bunch of services that you offer. And then they put a CTA in there for a cleaning or a cheap cleaning or a free cleaning or a free exam or whatever.
I was going to say that's the one that got me last time was the I think it was just free initial exam and cleaning or something like that. And I'm like, well, that's kind of all I need, so that's where I'm going to go. And but there's a lot of those out there, and it's kind of a race to the bottom, I guess, in terms of how many freebies we're going to offer, I would assume.
Well, it's what else could it be, right? Like if your message has to be generic enough to hit anybody with any condition at any point in time, it really limits what kind of call to action you could ever have, right? So I understand how they get to that point, but when it's so generalized, you can't have any specificity to your message. So once we go, hey, we're going to talk to people that are missing multiple teeth, or let's talk to people that are dealing with a loose lower denture, all of a sudden the advertising becomes much more simple and much more cost efficient. And anyone that responds to this type of advertising is not going to be a small case, and they're not going to be somebody coming in for a cleaning. We already know that. So we can set up the sales process accordingly. Whether you're targeting that or you're dealing with people with broken restorations or complex occlusal cases or, big smile makeovers, whatever it is, as long as we could target the pain point and the condition, the advertising got very simple. What did not get simple was setting them up to handle the leads efficiently, schedule efficiently, and then close, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 fee for service cases. That was a challenge. That's why they needed both.
So that's interesting. Let's go back a little bit. I'm assuming that for every dental practice, they have certain areas that they are more competent at, or that they specialize in, and then they want to look at the market. And so somehow, because not everybody can say, hey, I want to do this service here. You need to kind of differentiate based upon your skill set and also based upon what the market kind of needs, right? So was there kind of a sit down period when you go out and talk to your customers, try to help them understand, one, how can we go after these bigger ticket, I guess you would call them customers or clients, procedures, but also what are you good at and what will the market actually provide? Do you have a process for that?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is just to kind of agree on strategy, high level strategy here. So we have to come to agreement on some type of a concept like, hey, we agree that in principle, we don't want to spend or invest a lot of advertising dollars on somebody that might come in and need $60, $70, or $80, right? Worth of dentistry, $150 worth of dentistry. We want to use more organic strategies to acquire those types of patients and acquire them through proximity to, really get the patients that live within closest proximity to our practice. And we don't want to invest a lot of dollars month in and month out in that. Want to invest 95% of your advertising dollars and the top two treatments that you can do that are going to bring in the most amount of production in the minimal amount of time. Now, those treatments are different from clinician to clinician, but still, that concept, we have to agree in principle that is an efficient way to grow the practice. And typically for single practitioners, they agree to that very quickly. The only exception is when that's not the business model and the model is set up just for volume. It's more of a clinic based and you've got 2, 3, 4 doctors in there. And, it's a completely different model. So the first thing is to agree, what is the model here? And what's the overarching strategy? And for me, it doesn't matter if it's big cosmetic cases or if it's restorative cases or if it's all on for immediate load implant cases. That's unique clinician to clinician. It's what type of big case do you like to do? What do you get fulfillment out of doing? And let's try to do those, often.
Mm-hmm. And then tell me a little bit about for those different types of cases that they want to pursue, would they all use the same type of media or would they differentiate on the media choice? And then also talk a little bit about the messaging, because I might not even know what quote unquote procedure I need. I might just want to know that I want to have a better smile, for example, or, that I want this pain to go away, for example?
Yeah. Good question. So no, it would not be the same media verticals for every client. Those are totally dependent on the market that they're in, the budget that they have, and the goal in terms of volume. So it's really important to be working with a company and that's something that's a little bit different about us is we're set up agency style. Most companies in dental are just digital marketing and that's it. We use a ton of digital marketing, but we also do a ton of TV and radio and newspaper and billboards and whatever is necessary. You have to be able to get to those places. As far as messaging, you're right. Like a lot of people, they don't know the procedure that they need. That's why, for the most part, good advertising that's direct to public, the core messaging is going to be built around the pain. It's going to be built around the condition that they have right now, whatever they're experiencing that's diminishing their quality of life. That's what the core messaging has to be built around, because that's what they're going to identify with and say, oh, that's me. Right. So the core messaging isn't so much treatment focused. The only time your core messaging is treatment focused is typically when you are targeting price shoppers. So if you have a treatment and you have a price advantage, right, and you want to specifically target people that they already know what they need, they already know what they want, they're just shopping, then your messaging can be built around that. But that doesn't do anything for the entire segment of the population that's just symptomatic. They haven't started doing research. They haven't been motivated to go get care, whatever the case may be. So the message differs dramatically, whether you're targeting people that are symptomatic or you're targeting people that are doing research from one procedure to another, or you're targeting people that have already made up their mind and now they're shopping and they're actually second opinions.
I'm seeing some similarities. Most of my experience, sales and marketing, has been on the B2B side, but I am seeing some similarities in terms of strategy. One is understand what your strengths are, understand what the market is, and also look at that long-term value. In for example, the B2B software as a service space, we talk about lifetime value of customer, and we talk about churn rate. So we know that if we get 10 customers in, maybe after 1 year we'll lose one or two of them, but those other ones that we know what their lifetime value is, so that we can determine, okay, we can invest this much, and then we will get X out the end in terms of the lifetime value of those customers, even after the churn, right? And I'm seeing that a little bit with your strategy there in terms of understanding what your strengths are, where you want to focus, and kind of identifying, who your customers are and how you want to communicate with them. In our space, the media is primarily online. And you mentioned that, you guys are like a full service agency versus, a digital shop. Talk a little bit about maybe, is your practice Florida only, or are you all across the country?
No, we're international. So we've got clients in every major market, and we've got clients in Europe, we've got clients in South America, we've got clients in Mexico, Canada. We've got, close to 2,000 clients now.
That's awesome. And that's a lot of different media for you to understand in order to make recommendations. And then also, I don't know if you help with the buying as well, but then you have to be able to negotiate in those local markets. Talk a little bit about some of the things that you've seen with different types of media. I think you mentioned billboards, print ads, online, and talk about some things that have worked for each one of those and that don't work.
Well, it's first, when is a multimedia campaign really going to be useful? So a lot of times from a digital marketing perspective, let's say that we're in a smaller market and we've got a client that wants to do, say, their goal is 20 or 30 full arches a month. That's a lot of volume. Say they're in a small market, Little Rock, Arkansas or something. When they're in a small market, there's only X amount of searches that exist online. That's it, right? That's it. Smaller markets, you have to pull from a wider radius. But you can't create searches when you're utilizing AdWords, right? You're just bidding on existing searches. So what happens is you just don't have the volume of searches in small markets sometimes to even spend the budget that the client has. So then the very next place that you go is typically social media to create impressions. But a lot of times in the smaller markets, the media costs are so affordable that we can buy a TV commercial and your cost per thousand is excellent, or you can get billboards and your cost per thousand is excellent. It's not only that, but those are things that it's funny because you have a lot less competition there. There's going to be way fewer doctors that are on TV with an ad in regards to implants than there are going to be doctors running an Instagram ad or a Facebook ad. So it's just what's the smartest way to allocate the budget for the client that we have in the market in which they exist. Sometimes if you have $20,000 a month that the client has, that our job is to allocate $20,000 a month for a specific client, $20,000 a month in Chicago is not going to get you a multimedia campaign. But in Thomasville, Georgia, $20,000 a month, we can dominate with digital media. We can also run print, and we can probably also run TV. No problem. So it just really depends on their market, what we're advertising, what the volume is. And obviously with multimedia, with things like TV, newspaper, radio, it's the demographic skews a bit older. So for treatments that are that skew older, like dental implants and things like that, they still work really, really well. Whereas, if you're targeting a younger demographic, they don't work so well.
Interesting. What metrics do you show your customers in terms of, hey, this is what we've done and this is how we're performing? What do they like to see? Is it, hey, what ROI level do they feel comfortable with? And how do you prove that ROI?
Well, what we try to show them is an ROI, but how do we prove it? You have to track it all the way through. So once you have the strategy agreed on and we're actually executing the advertising, we have to have a place for leads to go. So the doctors have to utilize a CRM, right? That way we're all on the same page. So everything is being advertised, being tagged, it drops into the CRM. And from the CRM, that's where they're working the leads. They schedule it into the practice management system and go back and close the case. Everything has to be updated from there. But what do they like to see? They like to see cases closing. And that's the tricky part, right? With marketing ROI, doctors ask me all the time, they're like, Bart, what kind of ROI can I expect? And the only honest answer to give them is I have no clue. I don't know. I really don't know. A lot of it depends on you. If you ask me, what can I expect cost per lead? I can give you a really, really close idea based on the ad that we're going to run, the cost of the media in your market. I'll have a good idea of how many leads I can generate, right? If we've got a really good ad and really good CTA and it's super aggressive, like I'm going to tell you. If it's not, and it's more of a branding ad and it's more of a boutique practice that's charging 5 times more than everybody else, I can give them a really good idea in terms of what's going to cost per lead. But ROI, how the hell do I know? I mean, how does anybody know? Everyone goes, oh, you should expect about that. That's all crap. Nobody knows. I don't know if they're even going to answer the phone. I don't know how the patient's going to be treated when they get there. I don't know how they're going to close or if they're going to close. I mean, we don't know until we start, right? That's why I tell them you can't if you really want to do big cases and you want to do them in volume, you can't get halfway in. You just can't. You've got to get all the way in and understand that marketing is just an extension of the sales process, but that they don't even have a sales process nor a salesperson employed within the practice right now, right? So you can't get halfway in. We have to say, hey, here's the ROI that we want to achieve. And now we're going to do whatever's necessary to achieve it. And it doesn't matter if we go 2-3 months and we don't have an ROI. Let's say we have a negative ROI. Does that mean you wasted your money? Well, only if you don't know why you're getting a negative ROI. Because if we have a good strategy, you can have a great strategy and a lack of execution, and you can have a negative ROI. But that doesn't mean trash the strategy. That means work on executing, right? If we need to execute more on lead management, then let's train there, or let's hire someone different. If we need to execute on the consultation process, if we need to execute on a system, wherever the breakdown is, that's how it goes, and I have a lot of doctors ask me to do things that, they're talking about, they'll throw numbers around like, hey, I want to do 10 arches a month, or I want to do 10 full mouth reconstructions a month. And I'm thinking, well, you have $1 million practice. What you're talking about is an $8 million practice, right? And for a business, any business to go from 1 to 8 million like that, it's not that easy, and it requires work and refinement. And marketing's not a magic bullet for it. This is about growing businesses, and marketing is one part of it, but it is not the standalone reason in which a business is going to succeed or fail.
So what I'm hearing you say is like, look, I can bring you the leads, but if you don't follow up appropriately and then you don't do the consultations in an effective manner, that's pretty much on your execution there, right? And we have to dig into ways that we could probably improve that. Okay. But you can give a pretty good idea in terms of the number of leads.
Easy. The leads, cost per lead, no problem. It just depends on how aggressive the ad is going to be, right? And what our strategy is going to be. But we have the Closing Institute. So I have a sales process for them to follow. We have online training. What they have to commit to is the time and the energy in doing the work that's necessary. You have to do the work. It's not like they can pay me and I can fix all this stuff. No, you're going to pay me, and then we're both going to go to work. We're going to work on our end, and then they have to work on their end. But we have the business blueprint basically set up, but they do have to do the work, and they've got to understand that when you're attempting to tweak or change your business model and you're going through a growth phase, that you're going to experience setbacks, you're going to experience failures and a lack of execution. And all of those things are, I don't want to say normal. It's basically mandatory in any business that's growing. That's just a mandatory part of it. You don't give up on it after 3, 4, 5, 6 months, right? You just commit to it, and we work at it.
You'll have that operational stress, and what comes first, chicken or the egg? Do you build the operation and then get the customers, or do you get the customers and then build the operation? You try to do a little bit at the same time and balance it out. But to go, like you said, from 1 million to 8 million in a year, I can't imagine all the operational headaches of that. Let's focus on the sales follow up and the consultation process. Can you talk me through some less effective approaches that you've seen? And then what are some of the more effective approaches for that lead management, for the follow-up, and for the consultations? Because, when I show up, if I'm getting something major done, I know what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for that lowest cost provider. I'm looking for a dentist or a doctor that's going to spend some time with me, get to know me, and then communicate to me in a language that I can understand what they are proposing, etc. And the cost is kind of way down here in terms of my hierarchy of needs in that scenario. But maybe you can talk a little bit again. Worst practices, best practices. What have you seen? And I'm sure you've seen it all.
Well, I think that the biggest mistake that's made just across the board is that the practices are predominantly focused on treatments, focused on selling treatments. And when everything revolves around a treatment, that's where you start to get price shoppers, and you start to get into negotiations and everything like that. The doctors, from a treatment planning standpoint, and the treatment coordinators, right? What they do is they do an exam, and they go, okay, what's wrong? Okay, here's a problem, and here's a problem, and here's a couple different ways that we can fix the problem. Right? None of that is proactive treatment planning. That's all completely reactive, right? And I'm giving you options of treatments, but they're not outcome focused. That's the real thing. We're reacting and we're treatment focused, almost like selling a product, instead of speaking to the patient going, okay, what are some of the goals here? What type of outcome are we looking for? You know what I mean? Like, we're not trying to sell implants or sell all-on-4, sell an overdenture, right? We're trying to figure out based on where the patient is right now, what kind of clinical outcome they want. What do they want in terms of stability? What do they want in terms of longevity? What do they want in terms of aesthetics? And whatever that outcome is, that is what the treatment plan is, period. There's no 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different options here, right? It's one way to go from where you are to where you want to be in terms of your lifestyle, but that's not how it's treatment planned. So it creates a host of issues when the practices are selling products and they're not treatment planning to an outcome. And I ask them, why are we giving them 3 different options here? Because what do they usually get? When I get 3 different options, they say, well, I don't know, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. But typically it gives, I can do this 3 different ways. The very next word out of their mouth is going to be, okay, how much does each one cost? And all of a sudden, the cost is the biggest driving factor in which one they're going to choose. But what they don't realize is all 3 of those are there to achieve a different clinical outcome. None of those are going to give you the same level of aesthetics, function, lifestyle, or longevity. Otherwise, there wouldn't be different options. So our philosophy with the sales training is there's the patient's current state and then the patient's desired state. These two things have to come from the patient themselves. I can't tell the patient what their desired state is. I have to ask the right questions to get them to tell me that. But once I have the current state and the desired state from the patient, now the patient's job is over. And the doctor comes in and says, hey, the best and the most efficient way to go from here to here is going to be to do this. Boom, 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 whatever that treatment plan is. And it simplifies it, and it doesn't put the doctor in a position where they're recommending something just to recommend it. Everything is proactive based on the outcome that the patient stated.
That makes a lot of sense. I was actually going to just ask you what's some of the language that they can use, but it starts with asking the questions, right? And saying, hey, what are you looking for as a patient, and what would be the ideal scenario? Can you give me some other examples of kind of the right language that providers can use to to introduce their recommendations versus the options, the menu items, and then you get into the whole paradox of choice and the race to the price and all that stuff. So what's some other ways that they can kind of introduce their recommendations?
Well, I don't see a way in which they do present multiple options, right? The only way you can present there may be 2 or 3 different ways that you can treat a patient. Let's say a patient comes in through advertising, they come in for implants, okay? And let's say this patient hasn't been in the dentist in 20 years and they've got terminal dentition. Okay, these patients need to come out. How many different ways can you possibly treat that patient? Well, the patient's a candidate for a denture, right? They're a candidate for an overdenture. They're a candidate for an all-on-4. They're a candidate for a hybrid. They're a candidate for Crystal Ultra. They're a candidate for zirconia. I mean, there's a ton of different variations, all of which they are a candidate for. Those are all different ways that you could treat the patient with whatever condition, none of which matters, right? So remove the treatment completely from I just try to wipe the treatment from my mind. I'm sitting there with a patient. We're going through current state. You look at the CT and we figure out how their condition has been negatively affecting their life. That's always step 1. Step 2 now is, okay, what are we trying to achieve? And we have to figure out you have to ask the patient the right questions. And this is why it's really important to have a treatment coordinator working in tandem with the doctor on these big cases so that the treatment coordinator is doing 75% of the consultation. The doctor's only doing 25%. I want the doctor busy doing the surgeries. But once we get the current state, and then we're talking about the desired state, that's what anchors the entire treatment plan. So this person comes in with terminal dentition. There's a ton of things you could do. You say, okay, but let's say that patient says, doctor, what's really important to me is that I can regain as much function as possible. I want to be able to eat, chew, speak, and I don't want to have to think about it. I really don't want to have something that's going to come in and out. I want something that's going to be stable as possible. And I don't want something that just looks like a denture. I want it to look Like, I don't need it to be the whitest, most movie star smile. I want it to look natural though, right? And I want this thing to last. If I'm going to do it, I want it to last. Now, you have a patient tell you that. Why are we talking about a denture with them? How would a denture be relevant to accomplish what they want to accomplish? How would an overdenture be relevant? How would a locator case be relevant? Are they candidates for these things? Yes, but none of them are relevant if the patient states a clinical outcome that they want to achieve. How many different options are relevant at that point? There's one best way to achieve what it is that they want. Give them the best way. Does that make sense?
Totally. Can you give me an example of just, a home run that you've helped one of your customers hit in terms of where they were and where you were able to take them in a year or two? And talk a little bit how you did that, right? I mean, because you can't just say, okay, hey, I'm going to go out and spend $20,000 a month on AdWords, and hey, then you're going to go run your practice. Obviously, you're hand-holding or helping advise them both on the marketing side, but also again on that sales side. In terms of, I forget how the term that you use, the care coordinator, is that
treatment coordinator? Yes,
treatment coordinator. Excuse me. Yeah, I mean, obviously that person needs to be coachable and probably need some coaching as well, because it's interesting because I've had dentists, which was really weird. It never happened when I was younger, but this last few years where dentists would actually give me a call back personally. And for me, I kind of felt like, well, wait a minute, because it was like a sales call. A little bit awkward because I probably prefer to talk with the treatment coordinator. Just felt like a little bit that the doctor's one step removed. But anyway, why don't you talk about like a home run that you've experienced with one of your customers and how you got there?
Well, I got a customer, a doctor that came on board a while ago, and he had a practice where it was the doctor, and I think he had two other dental partners, one of which was his wife, and it was a general dental practice. And they did some cosmetics and stuff like that, and he did implants, but he didn't do a ton of them. He wasn't doing a whole lot. It was kind of basic. We were going for a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Long story short, I wanted to transition, and I really talked to him about, hey, if we can hone our focus and we don't have one campaign over here for veneers, one campaign for new patients, one campaign for implants, one campaign for this, that, and the other. If we can focus it and just build the surgical side of your practice, you're not going to, he wouldn't have to worry about the number of new patients he was getting every month, because he would basically be removing himself, and the associates would have more than enough patients at that point. It's just you have the senior doctor that can do all these cases still competing with the junior doctors over all of the new patients. And I thought that was kind of crazy. Let's keep you doing the things that bring in the most profit and the stuff that nobody else can do. So if we succeed in building the surgical side of the practice, you're not going to have to worry about the associates. So I said, okay. So we started to rebuild some of the systems in his practice. And the first thing was, hey, we've got to have kind of a team of 3 to run this business. I need somebody within your practice has a sales background that's going to handle and manage the leads. I need somebody with sales background that's going to do the consultations with you and close the cases. And then I need you. So, the goal was to do big multi-implant cases. He had done them in the past, but again, it was just sporadic, Once we got the right people in place, we came up with the pricing model, figured out his cost of goods, made sure he was priced right, his margin was right. He had a really good digital workflow that they implemented, and then we launched the advertising. And I think month 1, our goal was always to get to 25. That was our goal, to do 25 arches a month. Month 1, we did like 12. Month 2, we did 17, and we've been over 20 ever since. And now they're always in between somewhere 30 and 40,000. He's in a mid-market, between 30 and 40 arches a month. But the surgical side of the practice now is $7 to $8.5 million, whereas this entire practice of all 3 doctors was like $2 million before we did this. So the whole practice is $10 million. and becoming efficient with the large cases, right? In the surgical side of the practice, it pays for everything else. He could be unsuccessful with everything else and still be wildly successful at this point.
I'm just curious, because what we're talking about here is primarily helping other businesses do B2C marketing. But you, as the founder of Progressive Dental Marketing and the Closing Institute, you have to do B2B marketing and sales. How does your approach differ at all from what you're teaching your customers?
It doesn't. I mean, I've taken this company from 0 to $100 million, right, in a year and per year. But I teach them the same exact thing I did. Like, I don't go out and advertise to any dentist to do anything that they want. We don't. We start to segment it and we go, okay, what types of clinicians are going to be ideal for us? What type of clinicians do we want to target? And we build our business around helping those clinicians. So we want to target the best clinicians that are doing transformative dentistry. We don't want to do free cleaning advertising. Not because we don't like it, but because that's not a very efficient way for them to grow the business. So who do we target? We target doctors that are taking advanced surgical courses, doctors that buy advanced technology. We want the top 1%. We're not a volume-driven agency at all. There's a lot of companies that have more clients than we do, but our average client is way larger than anybody else in the industry. And that's the same exact thing that I teach the doctors, is when you advertise B2C, who are we advertising to? Let's pick someone out. You want to advertise people with terminal dentition? We want to advertise the people that need a lot of dental work. Let's talk to people that haven't been to the dentist in 10, 15, 20 years. Those are the ones you want because they're going to bring in more production in less time. And you're going to grow without breaking everything, right? You don't need 120 patients a month. I can hit the number with 15 for some of them. Some of them I can hit it with 30. Some of them can hit it in 10. But the fewer patients that you need to hit the production number, the easier it is to scale. That's why it was a lot easier for us to scale as a business, because we don't have like, an orthodontist over here, a pediatric doctor over here, a general over here, oral surgeon over here. Everything was concentrated into big transformative implant or restorative types of doctors for us. So that's how I've been able to help them so much. Basically, I'm just ahead of them. I'm ahead of them in terms of scaling my business, and I have a much larger business than they do. So I've already ran into all these problems. So I literally teach them the same exact strategy that I have implemented. Sales-wise, same thing. Outcome-oriented, everything is the same. So it doesn't differ at all.
That's awesome, man. Hey, I think with the Sales Institute, the Closing Institute, you have an annual event. I think you're down in October 24th, 25th. Mm-hmm. It's your annual team-centric sales conference.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's the Full Arch Growth Conference. And with the Closing Institute, we usually have two different types of events a year. One is our annual event, which is the one you're referencing. Another one is a boot camp, which is more hands-on, nitty-gritty on the sales process. It's a lot of work, 2 days straight. The Full Arch Growth Conference is something for doctors to attend with their team, where I'm trying to just change or enhance their perspective a little bit, or broaden it. And what you see is some of the things that I talk to them about constantly in the Closing Institute. You'll see that leaders from outside the industry have very similar stories, right? And you can draw a lot of parallels. Last year we had Tom Brady at the Full Arch Growth Conference. A lot of what he spoke about being outcome oriented, goal oriented from a leadership standpoint. A lot of it they can translate, and a lot of it when you hear it from someone outside of dentistry, you're like, oh man, that makes sense. We also had Mark Wahlberg. Again, tons of parallels. We had Ray Lewis. This year, we've got Tony Robbins coming in and Andrew Bustamante as guest speakers. And it's just all about winning in business. And it's tough. A lot of the dentists tell me, man, you know what? We're not good business people. We're just, we're dentists first, business people second. But it's no different for an attorney. It's no different for a roofer. It's no different for a restaurant owner. It's just owner operator businesses are difficult, but they all have, for the most part, they have very, very similar challenges because they have to run the business and they're responsible for managing and oftentimes producing the revenue for said business. So the Full Arch Growth Conference is something where they can bring their teams. They can kind of get their head out of just being hyper focused on dentistry, and really focus on coming together as a team, learning about business and implementing best practices. I mean, you can hear Andrew Bustamante on one day, and he's talking about the strategies that he learned in the CIA to survive and succeed as an undercover operative. And then you can hear from me about the things that it took to build this business and the things that it takes to build a full arch practice. And then you can hear from Tony Robbins about building your life, basically. And you're going to draw parallels from all of those different things. And it's just it's a movement and an experience that can come in that's not going to be like anything they've ever had in dentistry, that generates a lot of excitement with the team, really just sets the team on a path, the doctor and their team, a path of unity where everyone feels like, okay, we all know why we're doing what we're doing. And we feel like we have a good strategy going back, and they go back energized and they go back excited, and they really take a lot from it.
I'm getting excited just listening to this description here. It's like, I've seen it many times as well, where owner operated businesses, they reach a certain level and it's so challenging for them to get to the next level, both with the operational scaling, but you've got somebody who's made all the decisions, and that's been their secret for success to that point. But they can't be a subject matter expert on everything, especially at all levels. And at some point they have to start outsourcing things, or they have to start building a team. And when they build that team, it's nice if they're all aligned and motivated. So I can definitely see the benefit of participating in an event like that, and just kind of adopting that mindset. Let me ask you, you've built a very successful business. I believe that you've recently sold off a portion of your business. And maybe before we talk about that and why you do that, what keeps you motivated? Because I'm always fascinated by people who have the drive. Doesn't matter, times are good, times are bad. They just go out and they do the work. They put in the reps. Let's say you're having a bad day, a bad week, a bad month. What keeps you motivated?
Well, it's not having a bad day or a good day or a bad month or a good month that really affects. I don't know if I wouldn't say that really would affect me at all. You're just driving towards building something. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it doesn't matter if it doesn't really matter how you feel every day, whether it's a bad day or good day.
Well, it does to some people, it doesn't to you, but so for you, it doesn't matter.
It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant, yeah. Right? The only thing that is relevant in business is, what are you trying to create? What are you trying to build? Now, I always focused on building. I never focused on, hey, what's my EBITDA going to be? What's the profit margin going to be? What's the revenue going to be? I always focused on building something. And oftentimes I took a step back financially in the business, well, from an income standpoint, maybe, but I never looked at it as a step back, because I'm trying to build a business that can predictably grow these practices in the most efficient way possible, regardless of where these practices are starting, right? Same thing with like the partner that I took on. I didn't take on the partner because I wanted to sell a portion of the company. I took on the partner because we have to create vertical integration from a software standpoint that requires way less manual entry on our client's behalf, because I have to be able to take the advertising and the ROI, I have to link those things up. Everything has a sync with the practice management system, right? I have to have AI. I have to develop AI that can help with the lead management. I have to create a feedback loop from when they close a case to feed back immediately to the marketing to make the marketing smarter based on who they're closing, not just to generate leads. But
I was actually going to ask you earlier when you mentioned CRM, like if you've got 2,000 customers and they all have 2,000 different CRMs out there, how do you manage that? But what you're working on there is the solution, or you already have the solution, right?
Well, we already have a CRM for them, but it's the integration with the CRM, right? So the CRM handles the leads, but when they book the lead for a consultation, they close it, they have to go back in the CRM, find the lead, and then update it. So it's manual. Everything has to be, I need vertical integration. And my company has to make more of a shift towards a tech company in order to do what we do in a more seamless manner and at scale, so that we know if the doctors are having a good month or a bad month from an ROI standpoint. The system can become smarter and smarter. But to answer your question, what keeps you motivated is the vision in your head of what you're trying to build. And you wake up every day and you go, hey, am I closer to that or am I further away from it? And it doesn't matter how much you make. I never cared about income. I still don't. Income doesn't matter. Income matters to somebody with an employee mindset, right? Somebody with an entrepreneurial mindset. The value, the enterprise value of the organization is very important, right? But I never have to make business decisions based on the enterprise value, because I know my clients and I know what's going to be valuable to them. I just have to build this, and the enterprise value is going to be there. But yeah, I mean, to think that it's all going to be easy is crazy. And I mean, it's like playing sports. You got to shoot the ball. If you prepare and you practice and you train, all it can happen is you make or miss. Right? You still have to take risks. I have clients that even today, they'll sign up as clients and we make mistakes still. All you do is try to see the mistake as early as possible and correct it. If I make a mistake and I lose a client over it, make sure that doesn't happen again. And you're just implementing systems and you're working and working and working and working. But if you build a business just to try to sell it, to make a certain amount of money, I don't think you're ever going to have a really good business. And if you build a practice because you just want to make a certain amount of income, I don't think you have a very good practice. My job is to make sure that we get the doctors where they want to be. The doctor's job is to make sure that they help the patients get the clinical outcome that they want. If the doctors are always focused on a better clinical outcome in a more streamlined period of time, in a better experience, then they always have something they're striving to. If you lose that, though, then you show up to work every day and you just bust your ass and you're constantly putting out fires, and that gets old. That can get old really fast. But if you're proactive and you're outcome oriented and you're actively working towards something, then, hey, yeah, there's fires over here. That's fine. But nothing's going to take your attention from driving the business forward. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's just the way I think about it.
It does, and I think that's an amazingly healthy outlook. And don't just focus on your income, and focus on the bigger picture. I love that. Let me ask you last question here. Any book recommendations, either on the subject of sales and marketing, or just general topics, or motivation?
One of the books that I read a long time ago that stuck with me was a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. And that book really stuck with me. And I think it would be incredibly helpful for all the doctors to read it. Because a lot of the doctors have this thing in their mind that they don't sell, or that selling's bad or something like that. And selling's only bad if you sound like a salesman, that you're pushing a product. You know what I mean? That you're not that the patient feels like they're not being heard. The best salesman, you don't ever feel like they're selling you anything. That's the whole point. If you're trained, it's the highest form of communication. It's just that they're not trained there. And a lot of them don't have even the level of awareness. They don't even run a sales ad to hire somebody to be a treatment coordinator. So there's no one, usually the people that we train in the Closing Institute, they've never been through sales training. They're either an administrative background or they're a clinical background, and they're asked to grow that practice and sell millions of dollars in treatment. They don't have any sales training. They don't have a trainer. They don't get feedback on their sales calls. They don't get critiqued. They get no support. Nothing. Their clinical team, on the other hand, they got continuing education all over the place. They're all certified, right? The hygienists have to get a license. The assistants have to become certified. All of these checks and balances to make sure that you have quality control there. And then there's zero quality control from a communications or a sales standpoint. So I think The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes would be a really good book for any of them to read, just to freaking get them thinking different about it.
Awesome. I love that. And I'm wondering, because, you know, all the dentists, they have to go through dental college, right? Do the colleges provide any kind of business? Because they're all going to have to go out into the world and create a practice, right? And so do they provide any courses? I mean, you should be in there at that level saying, hey, I'm going to come in and talk to you for 2 or 3 hours about what you're going to see and what you should expect. And here, I'm going to tell you the answers before you even get to the problems. But I mean, I think that would be amazingly helpful.
But the colleges aren't outcome oriented. They're not saying, hey, what's our goal? What's our goal as a college? Our mission is to make sure that these guys get out and they are successful in private practice, both from a clinical standpoint and from a business. They're not outcome oriented. They're going through saying, hey, here's our curriculum. This is our curriculum. This is our ideology. This is how we feel about it. This is the way we're going to teach you. That's not serving their customers. You know what I mean? And that's a good example of a business, that's going to have a hard time, you know, in the future. Is a business just says, this is the way we do it. Here's what we're going to teach you. Whatever happens afterwards happens. So no, they're not going to learn any of that. Who's going to teach it to them? A professor's never been in practice? A professor's never been successful? Are you kidding me? Better that they don't talk at all, because anything they say is probably going to give them bad advice or theoretical at best.
Well, I think they could have Professor Bart in there and give us some good pointers, but that's a whole other conversation. Hey, Bart, really enjoyed this conversation. First time for me to talk to somebody who's doing what you're doing. You've been extremely successful, and I can see why. Thank you so much for being on the Grow Fast podcast.
You're welcome, Mark. I appreciate it, man.
Cheers.
Thanks.